Hello everyone, welcome back to ESL DRILL. I am MNB ACHARI. This is part 2 of the lesson Environment. And if you are new to my channel, I would like you to subscribe to the channel so that you never miss an update in the future. Okay, now let's get into the lesson. Let me read this question and Maathai's answer. NHK Radio asked, "What happened when you started working with the women?" Maathai's reply, "Well, the first time when I told them, let's plant trees, the women said they did not know how to plant trees. So I asked the foresters to come and teach them. But they were very complicated. They are professionals. It became very complicated for ordinary illiterate women, so I told the women, we shall use common sense and just do what we do with other seeds. Women work on the farms. They are the ones who plant. They are the ones who cultivate. They are the ones who produce food. So I told them that seeds of trees are like any other seeds. So if they were to treat these tree seeds the same way they treat other seeds of food crops, there's no difference. I told them to look for old broken pots even and put seeds there." Let's look at this here. The question was, what happened when Maathai started working with the women? And she said that when she told the women that they should plant trees, the women said that they did not know how to do that because they thought that planting trees were different from planting seeds. So Maathai asked the foresters to come and teach them. So who are foresters? People who work in forest, taking care of the trees, planting new ones, etc. So that's their job. And Maathai invited the foresters to come and teach the women, but these foresters were very complicated. It means they were difficult for the women to understand. The reason? They're professionals. Professional people are people with certain skill to do something. Now these were professionals. They professionally looked after the forests. Now it became very complicated for ordinary illiterate women. So these women who were working with Maathai were illiterate people. They did not know how to read and write, and that's why the foresters could not communicate well whatever they wanted to tell the women. That's why Maathai asked them to use their common sense. What is common sense? Look at this here. The ability to behave in a sensible way, in a clever way, and make practical decisions. So she said, let's think practically. Let's use our common sense. Let us be wise and clever and sensible. And just do what we do with other seeds. What do we do with other seeds? We just plant them in the ground. Let's do the same thing, but a bit differently. Now, women work on the farms. They are the ones who plant. They are the ones who cultivate. It means that they prepare the land and use it for growing crops and plants. So they do everything on the farm. They do everything on the land. They are the ones who produce food. So Maathai told them that seeds of trees are like any other seeds. Seeds of trees are like seeds of plants. So she asked them to treat those tree seeds the same way they treated other seeds of food crops. And she told them that there was no difference at all. And she asked them to find old broken pots to put the seeds inside. Okay, let us see what happened next. Let me read these. They will germinate and they will know these are the seedlings from the seeds they planted, and we gave them plastic bags to be able to put those seedlings and to nurture them. And when they were about half a meter long, then they could go and transplant them on their farms. In the beginning, it was difficult, but they soon gained confidence and they became very competent foresters. So I call them foresters without diplomas." NHK Radio said, "Why do you think they responded so well to your message?" Maathai's reply, "It was a need. When the women said they needed firewood and building material, we responded so that..." Maathai's reply, "It was a need. When the women said they needed firewood and building material, we responded to that need. Plant trees. Then you'll have trees for firewood. In the tropics, trees grow very fast. In 5 to 10 years, these trees serve as firewood, as building materials. Let's look at this here. The word germinate. They will germinate. So it means if a seed germinates, or if a seed is germinated, it begins to grow. It starts growing. So they wanted to put the seeds in the broken pots, and those seeds would germinate, and those were the seedlings. Now, after germination happens, you see seedlings. What are seedlings? Young plants or trees grown from a seed. From the seed, you get these seedlings. And Maathai gave them plastic bags so that they could put those seedlings there and nurture them. What is the meaning of nurture? Feed and take care of a child or a plant. Here we are not dealing with children, we are dealing with plants or trees. So once the seeds turn into seedlings, they put them in the plastic bags and they take care of them, they nurture them. And then when they reach half a meter length, these women could take them and transplant those plants on their farms. So transplant means to move a plant from one place and plant it in another place. Simple definition. And finally, these women gained confidence and they became very competent foresters. Let's look at the meaning here. Here, competent means having enough skill or knowledge to do something. Now, the women gained the knowledge to work like foresters do. Forester's job is to take care of trees in the forest. Okay, now these women were doing the same job that the foresters were doing. So Maathai called them foresters without diplomas. So diploma is a degree. Now these women did not have any degrees. These people were not educated, but they were doing the work that the foresters were doing. That's why Maathai called them foresters without diplomas. Now NHK Radio asked another question. Why do you think they responded so well to your message? Now we have understood that women responded so well to the message given by Maathai. And why was that? Maathai said that it was a need. Simple and direct answer. It was a need. When the women said they needed firewood and building material, we responded to that need. Plant trees. And they realized why they had to plant trees. They understood that they would have trees for firewood. In the tropics, tropical countries like India, where there is a lot of heat, especially in summer, trees grow very fast. And in 5 to 10 years, these trees grow tall and big and they serve as firewood, which is used for cooking, and those trees also serve as building materials. Okay, let's move on. Let me read this. Once we had planted those trees, we saw the need for them to understand why we have to have good governance. So it became important to give them civic education so that they could understand how we govern ourselves, why we govern ourselves the way we govern ourselves, why we are managing our environment the way we are managing it. Because we were dealing with the environment, we gave them education both in civics and also in environment. That made them understand clearly why they should take up the responsibility of protecting their environment, that it was not the responsibility of the government or the responsibility of somebody else to come and rehabilitate their environment on their own land. It's them. It's their responsibility. Simple thing. Look at this word civics here. That's a school subject which deals with the rights and duties of citizens, people of a country, and the way government works. The whole paragraph is all about Maathai explaining to the women the way the government system works. She explained to them the rights of the people, and at the same time she told them that they had certain duties as well. Their duty was to protect the environment so that they could be protected in the end. She explained to them why they were planting trees, and she explained to them why they were governing themselves, why they were managing in that way, in such way. And that is why she gave them education both in civics and also in environment. She told them of their rights and of their duties. And she also told them about environment. And they understood very clearly and they decided to take up the responsibility. So take up here means accept. They were ready to accept the responsibility of protecting the environment. And they also realized that it was not the responsibility of just the government or the responsibility of someone else. They understood that it was their responsibility, their own responsibility. Let's look at the next part. NHK Radio's next question. What transformations did you see, Maathai? Here is Maathai's reply. One of the bigger transformations that I saw was that ability of an ordinary illiterate woman to get to understand and to be able to plant trees that in 5 or 10 years became big trees, and she was able to cut them and be able to give herself energy, to be able to sell those trees and give herself an income, to be able to feel confident that she had done something for herself. That sense of pride, sense of dignity that they are not begging, that they are doing things for themselves was very empowering. That transformation was very powerful. Okay, here transformations means changes. So there were 3 transformations, and here Maathai is talking about the first change that happened as a result of Maathai working with the women in planting trees. She said that one of the bigger transformations was that ordinary illiterate women being able to understand the need to grow trees. So they understood that in 5 to 10 years, all the trees that they plant would become big, and then they would be able to cut them and they would be able to give themselves energy. They could use those trees as firewood, and they could use them as building materials. And not just that, they gained confidence because they realized that they had done something for themselves, and it gave them sense of pride. What is sense of pride? That's a feeling of achievement. They felt that they achieved something, and they also had sense of dignity. That's sense of importance and respect, because they were not asking anyone for money, because they were not begging anyone for money. They had this sense of pride and they had this sense of dignity, and they understood that they were doing something for themselves, and that was very empowering. That was what made them feel stronger and more confident than before. An empowering change. Okay, let's look at the next transformation. The other is the transformation of the landscape. Places where there was dust, there are no more dust. There are trees, even birds and rabbits. They come back and they make the environment very beautiful. There is a shade, and sometimes even dry springs come back because the water is not running. The water is going into the ground. Very profound transformation. It's a wonderful transformation, really. Look at this here. The second transformation that Maathai mentioned was the change in the landscape. What is landscape? It's nothing but an area of countryside or land. I mean, whatever you see when you go out is what you call landscape. So surroundings have changed. The environment has changed. There used to be dust and things were dirty, places were dirty. Now there's no more dust. And now there are trees and there are birds and there are rabbits. Now all these have come back and they have made the environment very beautiful. So we learned in the first part that as a result of the British people growing commercial plantations like the pine trees and the eucalyptus trees, they destroyed the local biological diversity and flora and fauna disappeared. Now everything came back. And the most wonderful thing about this landscape change is this. Even dry springs come back. What are dry springs? They are places where water comes up naturally from the ground. Do you see that these days? No. The water naturally comes up out of the ground, and that's a wonderful change. It means the water level in the ground has increased. That's a wonderful change. That's a profound change. Means that's a huge transformation. That's a great change. Let's look at the third transformation. And the other transformation that I saw was the willingness of the people to fight for their rights, to decide that they have a right to a good, clean environment, to decide that they will fight for their forests. They will protect their forests and they will not allow corrupt leaders to take their public land. Wonderful. So the other and the third transformation that Maathai mentioned was the willingness of the people to fight for their rights. So women and everybody, they got ready to fight for their rights. They were really prepared. They were ready to fight for their rights. And not just that, they realized that they had right to a good, clean environment. They understood that it was their right to have wonderful and clean environment. And they also decided that they would fight for their forests in order to save them. They will protect their forests and they will not allow corrupt leaders to take their public land. Corrupt leaders, that's an adjective which means immoral or dishonest. So there are corrupt leaders and they do not want to allow those leaders to take their public land. Great change. The next one. NHK Radio asked another question. Maathai, how do you think you can influence the rest of Africa? Maathai's reply. Our efforts will inspire other people to stop wasting their resources and their youth in wars and instead engage in creating a peaceful environment, more peaceful states. I'm very happy about the fact that now in Africa you see new efforts of ensuring that Africans engage in dialogue, that they invest in peaceful negotiations for conflicts, that we manage our environment. We must restore our environment and try to ensure that we do not fight, because we are allowing the environment, especially the land, to be degraded. And then we fight over agricultural land and grazing land. I see a lot of hope in what is happening in Somalia, what is happening in the Sudan, what is happening in West Africa. I see a lot of African leaders encouraging each other to engage in dialogue. Wonderful, wonderful reply from Maathai. So here NHK Radio's question is, how can Maathai's work in Kenya influence the rest of Africa, the remaining parts of Africa? She said that their efforts in Kenya will inspire other people to stop wasting their resources and their youth in wars. Here, what Maathai meant was this one. Most of the countries, in fact, every country in the world is wasting their resources, especially youth, in wars. That's a great resource. Having young people in a country is more wonderful resource than any other thing. But all the countries are wasting their youth in wars. But instead, they have to engage in creating peaceful environment and more peaceful states. States here means countries. So engage in means involving in. So involve in. And she said that she was very happy about the fact that now in Africa there are new efforts being made to ensure, to make sure that Africans engage in dialogue. Dialogue is nothing but conversation, discussions or negotiations. People trying to solve their problems after discussing something. Now, they are investing in peaceful negotiations to settle their conflicts and disputes in order to manage their environment. And look at this, what we are doing these days is we are degrading the environment, we are degrading the land, and we are fighting over agricultural land and grazing land. Grazing land means grassland which is suitable for cattle to graze on, to eat grass. Now, we are depleting that land, we are degrading in the environment. But Maathai is very happy about what is happening in West Africa and Somalia and Sudan. So Somalia and Sudan, both these countries have had internal conflicts, where there were military revolts and military rule and people were vexed with that, and there were conflicts in the country, internal conflicts. Now the good thing is that they are trying to settle their problems, disputes, with negotiations, with dialogues. That's a wonderful thing. And she also says this: I see a lot of African leaders encouraging each other to engage in dialogue, to discuss the problems and settle them. That's a wonderful thing. Let's look at the last question here. NHK Radio asked, what is the one thing we can do? Maathai's reply: for me, my greatest activity is to plant a tree. I think that a tree is a wonderful symbol for the environment. And when we plant a tree, we plant hope. We plant the future for ourselves, for our children, for the birds. We plant something that will last long after we are gone. I think I need not explain this one because it's very easy. The only thing that I should explain here is this word last. Last means here continue to exist. So we plant trees and they will continue to exist forever. So even long after we are gone. So that is nothing but hope. We can give that hope to the people of future generations by planting trees now. That's a wonderful message given by Wangari Maathai. Well, that's the end of part 2 of the lesson environment. I hope you have understood everything I have discussed in this part. Please hit the like button, share and subscribe to the channel if you have not done it yet. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in my next video.